Thank you. So with Henry not here, Chedamir, are you available? Are you listening? All right, Van Stong, call this meeting to order, please.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself, but I'm here.
Oh, very good, Chedamir. Thank you. Henry is with us. Hopefully he'll join. We want to get started. Are you good?
Yeah, let's start the meeting.
Very good, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so let's call to order the meeting, the Transportation Advisory Committee meeting for Tuesday, August 18th, 2020. I will call roll. Mr. Simmons.
Present.
Mr. Atkinson.
Present.
Mr. Tong.
Here.
Mr. West. You can just say. Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Jessic.
Present.
Mr. LaSalle.
Present.
And currently we have Mr. McEnroth and Mr. Anderson who are absent. Once they join the waiting room, I will admit them in. So moving forward, approval of the minutes of July 21st, 2020 Transportation Advisory Committee meeting. Does anybody have anything that they want to add, change, delete from those minutes that were done? Does anybody want to make a motion to approve them?
I'll move that we approve them as is.
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Okay, and looks like Henry is joining us right now. Does anybody have anything that they want to change about the agenda that we're going to have tonight? Nope. Okay, I did not receive any public comments for this agenda, so that will lead us into our first presentation from Carla Owings. And what I will do, Carla, is I will share my screen. I have your PowerPoint up, and when you want me to move to the next, you can just say next if that works for you. Okay, and I think, let me just pull your PowerPoint up.
I finally showed up.
Hi, Henry.
Soon didn't want to play with me and I miscalculated dinner.
Okay, can everybody see this?
I can.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Carla, you are good to go.
All right, my name's Carla, and I just wanted to acknowledge I have two of my neighbors here. This is Jan, and this is Sharon. And we wanted to talk to you guys tonight about traffic, speeding, parking on Glen Oak Road, specifically between High School Avenue and South Beaver Creek Road. Next. So our three concerns that we would like to talk about tonight is speeding and not yielding to pedestrians, which are increasing the risks for accidents. Parking violations are decreasing the visibility for pulling out from Tharp Court onto Glen Oak. And the expected increase in traffic once the new park opens. So the next page is a map of the area. So the green is where the park is. Right next to that is High School Avenue. And the blue is where Tharp Court is, where we live. So we're talking basically from the park to South Beaver Creek. Next. So speeding is the first, and there's many cars that drive faster than the speed limit on Glen Oak. And specifically right at High School Avenue, there's speed bumps. And once they get past those speed bumps, they tend to just step on it all the way to the end of the road. And we've seen people walking, my neighbors also trying to cross the road, and they don't yield and they don't stop. So it's scary, you know. And then obviously the speeding's worse during the commute hours, which Monday through Friday, probably 6:30 in the morning till like 8:30. And then in the evenings, 4:30 to sometimes 7:30. And that's not just weekdays. It's in the weekend, it can happen anytime. And of course, when school was in session, we noticed it also once the school children got out, that traffic and speed would become an issue. But we are on the list for the speed check trailer. I think we're like 6 down, 6 or 7. So it's going to be a while, but we're there. So this neighborhood contains single-family homes and multifamily housing. Directly across the street, there's townhomes and apartment building. So there are many families, dog walkers, and children that play along the road and sometimes in the side road. And I contacted John, I believe it was like on a weekend, and surprisingly he responded to me, which was awesome, asking if you guys were having a meeting because we wanted to talk about this. And he asked me to contact the Oregon City PD and request that they monitor the traffic on Glen Oak. And we did notice an officer here once or twice, and it did appear that at least he took off with his lights going, so I'm assuming he was going after somebody. But I just want to say we appreciate them, you guys telling them and them listening to us. And I believe the gentleman's name was Justin Young. He contacted me and told me what they were going to do, that they were going to be out here and they would do it in unmarked cars, which was great. And that's exactly what they did. So we were wondering, our neighborhood compared to similar neighborhoods, you know, where are we at as far as speeding tickets and warnings? Are we comparable, or if we're worse, can they maybe issue more citations to help detour, make them think maybe we shouldn't be speeding down this road? So those are just some ideas that, you know, we would kind of curious to see where we stand. Are we not seeing what we think we're seeing, or are we seeing the cars that seems to us, they're driving very fast? And the next portion, so if you want to go to parking violations, so it's another, yeah, next one, sorry. I think it was like in 2009, 2010, that the neighbors here went to TAC and requested no parking signs, because pulling from Tharp Court out to Glen Oak, it was very difficult to see. You had to basically be in the middle of the road before you could see traffic coming in either direction. So they put the signs up, and that was great. They worked good, but as time has gone on, people have become very lax, parking where they're not supposed to be parking. And again, we're risking being T-boned to pull out into the road. Next slide. So John, I think you contacted code compliance. They did come out, we saw them, it was great. People quit parking there, but then a couple weeks they started parking again in the no parking zones. So we would like to, if we could get code compliance to come out once or twice a month, you know, just keep us in their loop. So hopefully if the habitual offenders will quit parking there if code compliance keeps coming around. So if you can go to the next. So this is just a couple of examples of parking. That blue circle is the no parking sign. So you'll see the white and the blue car are parked in no parking zone, and that's heading west on Glen Oak. So, and then the picture next to it actually shows the bumper of the car past the no parking sign. Next. And this is going east on Glen Oak, and the red pickup, of course, 3/4 of it to half of it is in the no parking zone again. And those slides or pictures were taken on the 27th of July, which was right before code compliance came out, or they came out like the next day or that day. So if you go to the next slide, here we are to the 11th of August. And again, the red pickup is heading east, and it's parked mainly in the no parking. His front bumper, I guess, is in the legal parking space, but you know, so it lasted about a couple weeks. So if you go to the next slide, and then this is a photo from August 12th, and the black pickup that's heading west was parked in the no parking zone. So next, the next item that we wanted to talk about was the safety in the neighborhood with the new park, specifically the speeding. As I said, you know, they are concerned about people that are trying to cross the road. And we worry that there's going to be an accident from not yielding to the pedestrians. And we thought, well, maybe painted crosswalks might be helpful. It certainly couldn't hinder. But we would also like to propose, for the safety of everybody in the neighborhood, that the speed limit on Glen Oak get reduced to 25 or 30 miles per hour. And we don't think it should only be around the park area, which would be like Glen Oak and High School Avenue, or if they extended it a little bit further, it'd be Hyder Avenue. Because from our experience and what we're seeing, once they get past that, then they're gonna just speed up and ignore, and we're gonna have families and people trying to walk to the park. And we fear an accident, a tragic accident. So next screen. So to wrap up, what we're requesting is increased ticketing for speeding violations, which of course would in turn mean OCPD keep us on their agenda to loop through our neighborhood. A decreased speed limit on Glen Oak, painted crosswalks, and increased code enforcement to come around periodically for parking violations. Next. So in closing, I just want to say we all appreciate you considering and listening to our concerns, for the effort that has been made thus far in addressing them, and we look forward to us working out a resolution where everybody's happy and we can keep our citizens safe and neighbors. And that's it.
Well, the next part is, do we have any questions? Anybody?
I just have a question about the no parking area, how that was decided to have it there, the signs put in those locations. Do you have any history on that?
What was that again?
Regarding the history of the no parking signs, about why they're located in those locations?
Oh, those were put in because my neighbors requested and TAC approved it after some study. Actually, Sharon could probably speak. She was actually really involved in that. So I'll actually let her answer that question.
Okay, we had the signs put up because vehicles like pickups and the vans that park right up to the curb, and they were parking actually on the curbs. We could not get out, and so it was decided by the committee that on two corners on Glen Oak, where the Coast Redwood goes across and Tharp Court go across, they're across from each other. So each corner had a sign on it. Two of them state that you have to park 50 feet back from the curb, so it's no parking there to curb. And then two of them reflect they're 25 feet from the curb, and so people don't park there or are not supposed to park there. Because when we did our presentation before, I have a pickup, and so I sit a little higher, but I got like halfway out on the lane that I was going to turn into, and you couldn't see if anybody was coming. So we almost saw a lady get T-boned out here because she was doing the same thing because there was cars parked up and around the corners. So that's why we ended up getting those signs, which has worked out quite well until we have all of the apartments and condos rented across the street. And, you know, like 3 people, we have one, the habitual offender. There's 3 cars for that one building or that one condo. So consequently, that means 3 cars. So they park over here or on the corners. And he's the one that in the red pickup that is there a lot.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are the curbs painted yellow in the non-parking zone?
No, they are not.
It sounds like it'd be a pretty cheap way to go ahead and let people know.
Yeah, yeah. And
Well,
you know, honestly, I don't know. We have a fire hydrant on Tharp Court, and we have cars that park directly in front of the fire hydrant even. So I don't know if we could paint that area too, if that might help. It's, you know.
So maybe I can speak up a little bit.
Say what?
Maybe this is John Lewis. Maybe I'll take a shot at this one a little bit. So generally, we try to avoid the curb painting because it's a costly endeavor, and when we do it in more than one place, about the only time that we've been doing curb painting is in some of our downtown areas now. You know, so generally we try to avoid that. The signage is clearly marked. I think these folks know the signs exist. The people that are parking in these locations aren't like visitors to a game. These are folks who live right across the street from there. So they know the signs are there. So I don't think it's a demarcation problem. I think it's just an enforcement problem, and that they know that they can park there and nobody's going to give them a ticket because it's happened so many times. So I think the approach on enforcement is great. I do recall back far enough, I can't even remember the date, but I remember this issue came up, and yeah, we got another really nice presentation from this neighborhood, kind of like what we saw today, which by the way was excellent, where, you know, made the same point. And the I don't remember who was street supervisor at the time, but they went out and they did the site distance study to kind of confirm that, yeah, there's a little hump in the road there, and with vehicles parked in those that close to the intersection, it really made it difficult for cars to even see. I mean, it made it hard for them to even kind of see whether or not there was a bike in the bike lane. So as it's provided now, it helps the Tharp Court driver be able to look for bicyclists first and foremost, and then move forward and look for the oncoming traffic. So it works well when it's obeyed and when it's enforced. So I think this is a parking enforcement issue first, and then the speed issue kind of second. And I heard earlier tonight, as I was kind of looking through the agenda and thinking about things, it sounds like whether was a one-time event or whether they're still kind of actively patrolling the area and enforcing the parking, sounds like maybe that's not happened enough. Is that kind of what I'm hearing? It came
Yeah, I
one
mean,
day,
we saw them once, but they may have been here and we didn't notice them.
yeah.
We would appreciate if they could patrol more.
Yeah. Kim, can we go back to the ask slide, the slide that had kind of some of the things? Because I heard striped crosswalks, which always kind of piques my interest, and speed enforcement, so I don't know if you can get back to that.
The last slide, Kim.
Just because I want to make sure I understand. I didn't increase traffic ticketing for speeding, decrease speed limit on Glen Oak Road and speed limit. I was trying to get to our speed data, And so keep it there, Kim, for a minute. And I wasn't, there's too many screens open here, but I always like to go to our website and talk about speed data because we do collect it. Although we collect it every 3 years. 2020 was a year that we would normally collect it. We normally collect that in October after school started back again. My recollection is we made the decision to not collect speed data this year because of the pandemic, which is really messing with traffic counts and I think with less traffic, possibly even speed data.
Yeah.
But we do have 2017 data, which may not be perfect, but it's better. And it definitely has some information, and I was trying to get through it real quick. This always gets me into trouble when I try and do something real quick, but you know, obviously majority of the vehicles are in the speed limit, but there are those that are not, as we've seen in other neighborhoods, right? Park Place is another recent example of that. So I'm just, for some reason, I'm not getting to the one that I want to, but it does kind of look like we've got, you know, the peak speed is between 31 and 35. And, but there's definitely a fair amount of traffic between 36 and 40, and some traffic above 40, between 41 and 45. So it's kind of a normal curve, and we can ask for a speed study from ODOT. I can't remember though. We typically look to see when the last time that was done. Do you ladies recall, did we do that back when we heard from you before?
I believe they did. They had the radar machine or whatever that's called. The trailer. Yeah, they had that out here for a while.
Well, we can move that around, and that's another piece of thing that
we're on that list. We're just like 6 down, I think.
Yeah, but the official speed limit is something that the state currently does. There is some legislation that's considering whether local agencies can do that. The city of Portland, some people hear about the fact that the city of Portland has the authority to change speed limits. They're like the only jurisdiction in the state that's allowed to do that. But Oregon City doesn't have that authority, so we do rely on the state. And right now we've got, I know of one speed study that we're still waiting on for Park Place. So the turnaround time in those is pretty slow, but we can look at whether we've asked for that and done one recently. I just, you know, we try to limit those speed studies.
Our concern is just with the park. You know, we're going to have families, children walking to that park from these neighborhoods and the neighborhood behind us, and it's concerning.
Right. I think a couple of things that are going to change. I think a couple of things that are going to change for Glen Oak that may or may not affect the speed is the opening of Myers Road. I think that's going to have a big effect on Glen Oak Road, and the opening of the park and the reconfiguration of the intersection there, and whether those will benefit or hurt speed, I'm not sure. But typically we wouldn't want to do a speed study until those kind of major changes have occurred, and the traffic, surrounding traffic kind of has learned that route or learned those amenities are there, and kind of changes their habits, because it will have those kind of effects. So doing a speed study today, for instance, would probably be the wrong thing given the amount of change that we anticipate from Myers Road. Now we'll probably see more complaints of speeding on Myers Road than we've ever seen before, but that's kind of a different problem, right?
Right.
So I think that's there. I think that's also true for painted crosswalks. I worry about painted crosswalks because, especially if, you know, the feeling is that there's a speeding problem in the neighborhood, and we have kind of the same problem on this road that we have in Park Place, in that the grade of the road kind of, it's it's up and down, right? So there is one painted crosswalk that I recall that crosses on High School Lane.
Yep.
I think that's the appropriate place for it. You know, Tharp Court has got, what, 8 residents on it? Probably not the most to generate that, but with all the on-street parking, you know, I'd be curious if they don't obey the parking signs, would they obey the crosswalk and use the crosswalk, or would they just jaywalk?
Probably do.
That's kind of a question in my mind, but
Yeah.
you know, and then we had a public pathway just up the hill from you that was closed years ago because the neighborhood asked for that to be closed. So I'm not quite sure about the right placement and the right justification for another striped crosswalk, but I hear your concerns about the speed, and I don't know if the TAC members want to say any more about that or not, but I wanted to check in on that because there was lots of questions about the history of the parking signs and speed limit work.
Yeah, my question, John, would be, you know, it sounds like this is a compliance issue. People probably know they're not supposed to park there and probably know that they're speeding as they're going through there. So kind of like we did with Park Place, what can we do as far as coordinating the speed trailer along with enhanced patrol? It sounds like the police could handle the speed part, and then code would have to handle the parking part. But are we able to coordinate them to, you know, put it into a little bit more frequent loop?
I think the answer is yes. I had heard pretty loud and clear that they were going to keep a closer eye on it and check on it, but it sounds like if they've only done that 1 or 2 times, we probably need to get a better update from them about how much enforcement they're really doing up there. So we'll ask for that.
As far as the speed goes, I ride my bike on Glen Oak Road a couple times a week, and that speed bump right there is getting pretty flat. I mean, it's not going to slow too many people down. And what would it cost to go ahead and build that thing back up so that a person it'll get their attention to go ahead and slow down? I mean, that might be a deal, and or throw another one in above the multifamily housing.
Well, we can look at the existing one for sure. I don't know if it was built. I mean, that given the speed along there, I don't know the history of that speed hump, whether it was built to not be too aggressive, or if it is actually, you know, just over years worn down. But we'll have to look at that, Tim. And
my memory of the installation is that it was built rather less severe than would be normal, simply because it was on a major road, and at the time there was concerns that it may adversely affect emergency vehicle response if it was any larger. So I think there's been enough time passed that those have probably been addressed, and it might be a time to reassess that particular aspect of it.
yeah, that's been there long enough. I don't really recall. It's probably happened in my timeline here, but I don't recall. I don't know if it met the speed hump policy that we have, but
it was put in when Glen Oak Road was improved for all the subdivisions down there, and at the time the traffic, that little bitty itsy bitsy circle went in.
okay.
Henry, Vance here. I can't pull it up because of the Zoom meeting. I was trying to look up our standards on speed humps. Frankly, in this day and age, I doubt that we would approve a speed hump on a road that was 35 miles per hour at this time. And if so, it would be definitely a different parabola as compared to a 25 mile per hour speed hump. And certainly, as Carl and John were talking, you know, over the years, it is going to degrade a little bit in the wheel ruts, but you know, that's very easy for us to check. we can go out there, put our eyes on it, put a straight edge on it. But again, I'd have to look it up. Dana may know if she is on, but I don't know that we would even approve that at this current day, speed humps on a 35-mile-per-hour road. So that the fact that they're there is fine. I've got no problem with it from an operational standpoint, but things have changed in regards to the parameters of which you can install speed humps compared to 10, 15, 20 years ago.
It certainly is not mentioned in the speed hump policy, where I believe it says that those major roads are exempt from humps in general. The things that I would say is that I would like John or somebody to check the statutes, because I recall that the city has the ability to institute the 25-mile-an-hour speed zone unilaterally if certain conditions are met, which I'm positive are met out there on Glen Oak Road without the state speed study. But that was from 15 years ago, and those ordinances, those statutes probably have changed. I know because I did it on Lynn Avenue.
Right. Frankly, I defer to Dana Webb on this one. I believe she's our most informed on the process of how to determine those speeds. So, yeah, I'm sure you're right, Henry, but I'm not sure about nowadays. It seems to me that ODOT has to chime in on any sort of speed change that a city would propose.
And it sounds like the information John was talking about on the speeds he had on file from earlier, the 85th percentile probably wouldn't warrant making any sort of speed change, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so we can probably rule that one out.
The other thing that this brings to mind is, are we anticipating seeing something similar on Myers Road by the high school once it opens up?
Myers Road was designed for a 35-mile-an-hour
Right.
route. So obviously there's a school zone during most of it, right? Or the new portion, that's my recollection. And so, yeah, Henry, I think with regard to changing speed limits, I don't necessarily think that the city has been always compliant. We've tried to stay much more compliant than they used to.
I know.
And so it was always same with stop signs, right? They didn't always warrant stop signs, but they were also often installed. So I think right now we have and I've got to remember this, in a residential neighborhood or on a residential street, not necessarily a residential neighborhood, because all of our neighborhoods and most of our streets are but a residential street. So in some of the side streets in the Glen Oak neighborhood or in the multifamily subdivision, I think we do have some authority. It needs to be a designated street by the city commission, right? And we did it in the Kenema neighborhood as a test run. That was the first neighborhood that we did it in. And, police were concerned about that because enforcement was difficult. And the reality of it is most folks feel like there's a lot of speeding in their neighborhoods, but when they look at those small residential streets with cars parked on both sides, the speeding really isn't as high as they think. I'm just looking at the speed data again here. It looks to me like at Glen Oak Road, just west of Beaver Creek, the 85th percentile is 33 miles per hour going one way and 31 miles per hour going the other way. Getting down to Glen Oak Road, kind of east of Highway 213, evidently we had two different traffic counters in there. In one direction, the 85th percentile speed was 38, which is pretty aligned with the 35-mile-an-hour posting. And actually that's true going the other way as well. So both of those had 38-mile-per-hour 85th percentiles in 2017. You know, that could change over time. And, you know, I think, you know, more data would be warranted. But I just, you know, I think that the main issue here, it sounds like, that we're dealing with is people travel roadways, as we all know, based on what they're kind of comfortable with. And a lot of Glen Oak Road lends itself to a speed limit of 35 miles an hour. And I think most people are compliant with that. If they're not, we should be issuing tickets. And I think having police, you know, report a little bit more about what their findings have been. They may not be going back out there because they monitored it for 2 days or 3 days or whatever, and didn't find the kind of speeding problems that were being raised. Based on these traffic, this traffic data from 2017, I would kind of agree with that. But that still is, you know, I mean, that's not the perception. And we know that there's a difference between reality and perception. We hear it all the time.
Well,
We heard some of that with Park Place, right? There was a perception of speeding. The police checked that in several different ways and weren't able to kind of confirm that. But that's still not to say that speeding doesn't happen. It does happen. And usually it's a couple of neighborhood offenders, and or maybe they're not even neighborhood offenders. They're cut through traffic that's trying to get through there. So I don't want to discount what's been presented. I think we can continue to work on it. I just, I'm a little bit hesitant to suggest a NODOT speed study now with the changes that are coming. And if the TAC could kind of validate that, that would help. I do think enhanced parking and speed enforcement we'd like to check back in on that. I'd love to hear from the police department as well as what their results have been so far. The parking thing, if they've only been there once or twice, we need to get code enforcement out there to enforce on that. And it's outside. I know why they don't make it out there so much is because it's a little bit, they focus quite a bit on the downtown area and probably not so much in, you know, in these small areas where we've got these areas that are kind of posted for sight distance. So I think that's a complaint driven system. And I'd just like to check in with them first to find out if they're going to continue to go out there or if they think one and done.
I want to make another comment. The couple of times that we did see the police officers here, it was in the middle of the afternoon. It wasn't during the commute hours when we see it. And, or, you know, even later at night. And a lot of times, as far as like parking in front of the fire hydrants or on the corners of the roads, that of course is happening after code compliance is off work. They're no longer working. So there's nobody that would drive by to see it other than police, which they have a lot of other things to do than parking violations, but you know, so.
That's good. It's good to hear. I mean, not good to hear, but I appreciate the clarity there. I think we can point them at that a little bit more too.
And I have a question. Why do you guys believe that opening up Myers Road is going to reduce traffic on Glen Oak?
Because it's going to be more of the arterial than Glen Oak Road will be. And it'll be a better facility than Glen Oak Road.
Yeah.
And it'll be easier to get across 213 than it is to make the right on 213 and the left on Glen Oak Road.
True, true. Our concern is though with the speed limit being reduced because of the school zone, we feel we're not going to see as much as you guys think we are. Hopefully we're proved wrong. But you know, if you could go someplace 35 miles an hour or go one block over and go 25, I personally will probably pick the 35.
I have a question for Carla. Have you seen an increase in the apparent number of speeders in the last 6 months over what was there maybe last year?
I'm going to say no, because traffic has been reduced compared to what we've seen like last year or last summer because of the pandemic.
Mhm.
You know, if traffic was back to its normal level, my answer would be yes, because that's what we saw prior to March, February. So.
Well, I asked because I'm on Fifth Street and I'm seeing fewer cars, true, but I'm seeing fewer slower cars and more of the faster cars because there's nobody in front of them holding them up.
Right. Well, and the thing on Glen Oak, once they get past those speed bumps, it's a straight shot to Beaver Creek. So they just step on it. There's no curves, there's nothing. It's straight until you get right to the end where you curve a little bit to go onto Beaver Creek. So there's nothing to slow them down.
John, would it be realistic if we, asked for the speed trailer and enhanced patrol and code enforcement to be out there, that by the next meeting we could have maybe a little update from both departments as far as what they found, to see if this was just a few offenders that are repeating or if this is a more problematic?
I think that's completely reasonable and appropriate. So we don't need any motion on that. We hear that loud and clear, and appreciate hearing from the Transportation Advisory Committee members that they think that's the right direction. So
perfect.
It's certainly more information from more sources if necessary.
We would, if you guys are going to have it on your agenda next month, we'd like to know so we can listen in at least, if possible.
Well, I'm sure Kimberly there can make it work.
Yeah, I'll follow up with you, Carla,
Okay.
and let you know. And then, yeah, I looked at the radar trailer spreadsheet, and it's still, you're like right around 6 or 7. Yeah. So I don't know as far as expediting the placement of the radar trailers goes, because there's people that have already requested them, and that kind of they're supposed to go in order, but
through this process.
Yeah.
Henry?
Any other questions? Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been good.
Thank you, Carla.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to us.
You bet.
Okay, with that being said, it looks like, Christina, you're going to be up next. Will it work well for you the way that I did it with Carla sharing my screen?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
This is John Anderson. Did John Lewis imply that he is looking for a motion for this action?
No, he said that it doesn't need a motion. All right, I'm going to share my screen.
No, John, we can implement the speed trailer as it comes up in the rotation.
All right, are we ready?
Yep.
Okay, I think I got introduced already to most of you, but for the ones that joined a little later, I'm Christina Babcock. I work for Clackamas County, and I am the transit coordinator there, which is a relatively new position. I've only been with Clackamas County for a little bit over a year. And so tonight we're going to talk about one of the projects that Clackamas County is working on, which is a first last mile shuttle in Oregon City. Go ahead, Kim. All right, so let's talk a little bit about background. And before I go too far into this, I want to let all of you know that this is pretty high level. I'll go through kind of the whole project, and then if we want to dive down into some more details, obviously you guys can ask me some questions. But the presentation itself, I'll try to keep pretty high level. So in terms of the purpose and kind of the background of the project, there was a need identified in a number of different service plans, including the Clackamas County Transportation System Plan and a couple of TriMet service enhancement plans, for a need in Oregon City to have a shuttle that connects current transit. And those connections would serve underserved portions of Oregon City, right? So you have the big transit player of TriMet, but it misses specific portions of Oregon City. So this first last mile shuttle idea is to, make those connections that enable people to get, all the way to work, school, and other critical destinations on a daily basis. Next, Kim. All right, so what's in the plan? Well, there's going to be a lot of stuff in the plan. So we have Kittleson on board. Kittleson is a consultant. And at the end of the day, they're going to be putting together, an entire service plan for us. And so the plan is going to include summaries of those service plans I talked about before. So it's going to summarize the needs for Oregon City. It's going to talk about some of the existing conditions in Oregon City, key demographics, commuter shed information, and activity centers or locations that people need and want to access. It's going to take us through an entire operations plan, everything that's involved in that, from the type of service we run to the routing, maintenance, staffing needs, technology needs, all of that stuff. It's also going to address a coordination plan. Part of what needs to happen in Oregon City is there needs to be coordination with TriMet, Canby Area Transit, South Clackamas, and SMART to make sure everything kind of lines up, because if the Oregon City shuttle runs independently, it's not as effective for people in terms of transfers. It's going to kind of look at the financial planning. What does it look like 6 months out, a year out, 5 years, 10 years, and then provide kind of a full implementation plan. Next. All right, so project timeline. We kicked this project off right as COVID-19 struck, so we got off to a bit of a slow start. But public engagement and existing conditions have been completed by Kittleson. The public engagement portion had online surveys and some key stakeholder interviews that wrapped up at the end of July. And so currently they are working on a draft service plan, which Clackamas County expects to see probably next week. Once we get our eyes on it and kind of have a good idea about what we're looking at, we will pull together jurisdictional partners to discuss it more in detail, which looks to be probably the end of August, early September. People like John and Dana and Ray will be invited to join those meetings and see the draft service plan, provide feedback, and then Kittleson can go back and make some adjustments. Clackamas County can look at it and make some adjustments. And then hopefully a final service plan in late September. And then what isn't actually on this slide that I forgot to add is possible implementation as early as October. Next, Kim. All right. So let's talk a little bit about public engagement since that just wrapped up. There were 379 online responses, and it says there are about 50% showed interest in the Oregon City shuttle. And so something important to note about the public engagement for this particular shuttle was that because of COVID, it was particularly difficult to achieve. And so online surveys kind of addressed the 4 different projects we're actually looking at in Clackamas County, with Oregon City being one of them, right? So 50% of the people went through the full survey on the Oregon City shuttle. First 2 key takeaways were interesting. So it said more respondents preferred to walk to a stop than pay for curb-to-curb service. But additionally, respondents preferred a less frequent shuttle that gets closer to their origin or destination than a more frequent shuttle that they have to walk further to. So this is where we get into people want to walk, but they don't want to walk too far. And so how do we take some of this public engagement information and put the pieces together to get something that's going to make the majority of people happy? Go ahead, Kim. So more key takeaways. This is a really busy slide, but so 70% of the respondents preferred a fixed route, while 20% of the respondents preferred a demand response service. So just for everybody's kind of knowledge base, I'll talk through the 3 types of service. So you have fixed service, right? So think TriMet. You have point A and point B, and you have fixed stops along the way, right? Certain headways, meaning they come every 30 minutes, they come every hour. And then you have demand response on the other end, which is, somebody picks up the phone and says, hey, I'm here at Fred Meyer, and I need to go to Clackamas Community College, and they make a reservation and a vehicle picks them up and takes them from Fred Meyer to Clackamas Community College. Something kind of in the middle of that is called a deviated fixed route, which is the service type that we are looking to pursue here in Oregon City. And so it's a fixed route in terms of you have a point A and a point B, and you have fixed stops along the way, but the shuttle can deviate 3/4 of a mile from any particular stop to pick up somebody and provide more of that demand response service. And with that, reservations would be required. And so one of the survey questions was talking to respondents about if you did have to make a reservation, what is a reasonable amount of time to have to make a reservation? And most people said 2 hours or less in advance was something that they would be okay with. And so, if Ray wanted to be picked up at the, 3/4 of a mile from the college, he would need to call and he would make a reservation, and we would put him on the schedule to make sure that the shuttle bus picked him up, and then it would be a 15-minute pickup window, right? So you want to be picked up at 10 a.m. and the shuttle would pick you up between 10 and 10:15. And so the deviated fixed route is the route that we are going to pursue because we think it fits best for what's needed in Oregon City. And then the last bullet point there and the graph was actually surprising. It shows a desire to ride the schedule pretty much throughout the entire day. Initially, we had expected that we would see the bars go further to the right or larger during peak rush hour times. But interestingly, it's really spread across the board, which helps, Clackamas County and Oregon City try to determine, when it makes sense for the shuttle to run. Go ahead, Kim. All right, so some more takeaways. 90% were interested in riding on weekdays, and then obviously there's a subsequent drop-off on Saturdays and Sundays. There is still relatively high interest on Saturdays, less on Sundays, but from a shuttle startup perspective, it always makes the most sense to start with weekday service so that you can understand ridership patterns, make sure that you have routing and timing and all of that correct. So initially, we will be looking at doing a 5-day-a-week service for the first year, and then expanding to potentially 6 or 7 days in subsequent years. All right, let's talk about paying. So potential riders are willing to pay for the service, but if they pay, they want it to be easy. So mobile payments, think TriMet, Fast Pass, Hop, Fast Pass, monthly and annual passes, one-way tickets, things of that nature. So one of the things that Oregon City and Clackamas County and other jurisdictional partners are going to have to go through is creating a fare policy. And that fare policy is obviously going to have to balance the, equity, revenue, and ridership goals. And that's just something that's going to have to be discussed as we, move towards implementation with these shuttles. Next. All right, so let's talk a little bit about service area demographics. The demographic information that Kittleson used was from 2017, so the numbers are a bit outdated, but they're still relevant. So in 2017, a little over 35,000 residents in Oregon City, but of note, it is forecasted to be one of the fastest growing cities in Clackamas County. And that's important because it's lacking transit in very important areas, and this shuttle is obviously going to aim to address some of those needs. There were about 16,000 employed people living in Oregon City, and about 14,000 employees worked in Oregon City. And as you can see from the last bullet point here, people come into Oregon City to work from all over the Portland metro area, and they leave Oregon City to go to work all over the Portland metro area. So again, as we see, commute shed in the way that people are moving in and out of Oregon City, to have some holes or gaps in service be addressed by this last mile shuttle, could be very effective for, low income, vulnerable populations, and even just your everyday commuter to get some of the traffic off of 205. Go ahead, Kim. All right, so speaking of some of these populations, these graphs or these images are probably pretty small on your screen since it's a Zoom meeting, but Graphic on the left is people that are falling below 200% of the federal poverty line, and then the graphic on the right is people living with a disability. And so again, as I mentioned initially, you know, we're really looking to use this shuttle to serve, you know, underserved areas of Clackamas County. So these graphics are particularly important because we want to ensure that we're, you know, reaching the Clackamas Heights area, the Barclay Hills area, and things of that nature as best we can when we're discussing routing options. Next. All right, so operations plan. I talked in the beginning about all the things that are included in the operations plan, but we're not there yet on all of it because we're still, you know, this is a work in progress. So we'll talk through these three things right now, and then, you know, there's more to come as this plan continues to develop. Go ahead, Ken. So in conjunction with those graphics that were shown just a few minutes ago on demographics, one of the other important things to identify is obviously key activity centers. And so this map, if you guys can see it, there's a tan color that designates Oregon City. And then all those little markers on the map mean something. So you have, you know, a hospital, you know, Willamette Falls Medical Center, high schools, you have the Clackamas County offices that provide a lot of social services, veteran services. You have libraries, grocery stores, the community college, you know, and so this map was really done so that we can see, you know, where are key activity centers, centrally located, and how would routing address as many of them as possible. Next. So with that, you know, we already discussed deviated fixed route model, balancing that coverage portion with the frequency portion. And then, you know, with those key activity centers, it was decided that it must serve the Oregon City Transit Center. From a perspective, if we're trying to make connections with other transit providers, we have to go to the transit center. You have SMART, CAT, South Clackamas, and TriMet all coming in there. So the last mile shuttle needs to come in there as well. And then Clackamas Community College to provide, you know, people the opportunity to seek higher education. And so those are a must. They have to be on the route. And then we developed a list of shoulds. You know, should serve as many of these other locations as possible. And so you guys can see that there, medical center, industrial employment, some residential areas in Southwest Oregon City, and then some employment and grocery store destinations. So ridership estimates are hard because there are no shuttles currently like this in Clackamas County. So the closest comparison is to shuttles in Washington County. So Grove Link, North Hillsborough Link, and the King City Rideabout all kind of average somewhere in the neighborhood of 9 rides per hour. And then you have the Tualatin Shuttle around 7, and then the West Link is actually significantly lower at 1.5. And so we're forecasting 6 to 8 rides per an hour on the shuttle. And, you know, if we can achieve that ridership and maintain it and potentially grow it, it would be considered a success in the shuttle world. Next. So implementation plan, I think I already said something about this as well, but it's going to consider the immediate needs. You know, what do the next 6 months look like? It's going to look at the near-term needs. What does the next year, 2 years, 5 years look like? And it's not going to go a whole lot further out than that because Clackamas County really needs to monitor, you know, ridership trends and the impacts of service to make sure that we have the right shuttle in place and that we have the right frequency, that we have the right routing and all of that type of stuff. So the implementation plan isn't going to take it out, you know, 10, 15 years. It's really going to look at the 5-year and under time frame. Next. All right, so high level summary of where we're at. Within the next week or two, we should have some routing options from our consultant Kittleson and get together with jurisdictional partners and try to get something rolling for a potential implementation date of October. So that's what I have for tonight. I believe after speaking with Dana, I'll be back in September, I think. And at that point, hopefully I'll be able to share some more specific information regarding what everybody wants to know, which is where it's going to go, when it's going to start, and how often it's going to run. So with that, I mean, if people have questions, I'm more than willing to dig into the details.
I have one question, which I think the answer is pretty obvious, but is there coordination between the TriMet routes and the potential shuttle routes so that you're not duplicating service any more than absolutely necessary by the street layout?
Right. So the whole goal is to serve areas that TriMet doesn't. And so it would defeat the purpose if we were running alongside TriMet. There is going to be some natural overlap. There's only so many ways in and out of that transit center, right? So one of the natural overlaps is going to be coming out of the transit center and heading down McLaughlin to start a route. But yes, that is one of the main goals, is to avoid TriMet routing and hit those underserved areas of Oregon City the best that we can.
Well, I'm thinking that the community college, the transit center, of course, and the grocery store shopping area, Fred Meyer Safeway area, both have pretty good TriMet service already on both Beaver Creek and Molalla. And Beaver Creek and Molalla. And so that was why I was sort of thinking about that.
Okay, and there is going to be some overlap. You know, obviously TriMet goes to the community college. I totally get that. But we want to go to the community college because it makes sense. Maybe somebody, I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head, but you know, maybe somebody lives over off of Warner Parrott Road and wants to go to Clackamas Community College. Well, you know, TriMet doesn't get there very easily, right? So if the shuttle went through that neighborhood and they can pick up the shuttle, you know, they go into Clackamas Community College. Generally speaking, when consultants do studies like this, they usually provide 6 to 8 different routing options. And one of the things, you know, that I will do is take the routes that they've suggested and I'll overlay TriMet service and we'll look to see how much of it is duplicated. And to be perfectly frank with all of you, TriMet doesn't want duplicated service either, which, you know, that doesn't benefit them and it doesn't benefit us. But there is going to be a little bit of a balance there, Henry, just to make sure that we can still get to the places that we really think people need to go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Christina, John Anderson, you said it was on the west side in Washington County. They had some successful routes like this.
Yeah, so in Washington County, really a lot of them are in the Hillsborough area, but Hillsborough has 2 or 3 different shuttles. One is called the Grove Link out in Forest Grove. You have the Rideabout in King City, which is near Tigard. And you have the Tualatin shuttle, which is clearly in Tualatin. It has a couple different loops that it serves. And yeah, I mean, they are successful. They get, the people who use them rely on them typically, and the people who use them and rely on them typically don't have another transit option.
So over time, if the original route is set up and you have some major movement in the population, you lose your riders and you redo the route?
Yeah, there's nothing ever to say that a route is set in stone. You can revise the route. You can add another loop. You know, the Tualatin shuttle has a blue loop and a red loop, or a blue route and a red route. You can add trips that go certain places and other ones that don't. You have a lot of flexibility to move those things around. And that's actually one of the huge benefits of Clackamas County and Oregon City owning this shuttle versus having to go through, you know, like TriMet and convince them about why something needs to be changed, right? Clackamas County and Oregon City can work together to address the public needs.
One final question for me. The Pioneer Center has vans. I don't know the routes they use and so on. Do they get coordinated into this as well, or?
So the Pioneer Center, the senior center there in Oregon City, correct?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. So they do. They have vans that are done through Ride Connection. So that is more of what we would call a demand response service, right? So generally seniors come to the center, and then from the center they want to go different places, or the senior center picks them up at their home and brings them into the senior center for congregate meals. So yes and no. It's two different services. So the plan right now is not to incorporate a specific stop at the senior center, but that's not to say that that might not make sense at a later date. But in conversations with them, the transportation needs of the residents that use that center are being met by the system that they have in place.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm curious about the impact of COVID on future ridership trends. Like if transit ridership does not increase over next year because of COVID, and the community college doesn't reopen by next winter or spring, whenever, I don't know when we'll reopen, and same thing with high school, how would that impact decision making on Saturday and Sunday service in the future?
Well, I think that's a huge unknown.
Yeah.
I think that's a loaded question, Ray, because I don't know. I mean, I don't think anybody really knows, what's going to happen or when it's going to happen. What I do know is this: we are moving full steam ahead with implementing the shuttle, and then we're going to see what happens. And if that means that ridership isn't what it needs to be for the next year and a half, and we need to stay with weekday service because that makes the most sense, then I think that's a conversation that Oregon City and Clackamas County have. If ridership is higher than expected because people want to move around the city, then we may look at implementing it earlier. But I just think there's too many unknowns for me to really answer that and put myself in a box. I just don't know.
Okay. Thank you.
Can you explain some of the funding issues?
Yeah, not a problem. So the funding for this shuttle comes from what's called House Bill 2017, which is the State Transportation Improvement Fund. So if you guys have heard of the payroll tax, funds for this project are generated from that. This project falls under a portion of that funding called regional coordination. So TriMet gets, all of the entities within Oregon get money. So TriMet is the qualified entity in the area because they're the biggest transit provider, and money from TriMet is then dispersed to other transit providers in the Portland metro area, if you will. So a slice of the money that TriMet has been provided was carved out for regional coordination to put shuttles like this into place. So funding is not a concern right now, and COVID changed payroll taxes, which changes funding. But for the time being, TriMet has committed to keeping the regional coordination program whole, meaning we still have the dollars that we were advised that we would have. And so for the next couple years, funding's not an issue. Going forward, as we go into FY 22, 23, and 24, we'll have to see what happens, but I don't anticipate TriMet reversing their stance on those funds as long as the Oregon City shuttle is successful.
Hey, Christina, this is John Lewis. I don't know if everybody is aware of what kind of vehicles you'll be using for the shuttle service. So can you kind of share that and how accessible they are and those kind of things?
Yeah, so Clackamas County has purchased 2 vehicles for the shuttle service. They're what's known in the business as cutaways. So they're the smaller buses. They seat, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, they seat 12 people, and they have 2 ADA stations, fully accessible ramp to get on board the vehicle, wheelchair restraints, and the whole 9 yards. So they're small enough where they can maneuver around some of the residential streets to address the needs of the southwest area in Clackamas, but large enough that they can handle a fair number of people. And with ridership forecast being between 6 and 7 people an hour, At the time the buses were ordered, a capacity of 12 made sense. With COVID and social distancing rules in effect on transit, that will certainly lower the capacity of the buses, but still should be appropriate for what we think ridership will start at on the shuttle.
Sounds like it's similar to the Pioneer Center vans.
Very, very similar. And in fact, in some ways may be exactly the same. I haven't seen all of their vehicles, but.
Any more questions? Not hearing any, I say thank you, and it's been interesting, and we're looking forward to an update.
All right, I appreciate it, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina.
Yep. Thank you, yes.
So that moves us on to the Public Works report. John, I think that is you first, and I will make you a co-host if you'd like me to do that, because I don't have anything from you to share. Oh wait, you're muted. Unmute.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't have so the I-205 tolling project. I know. I think Dana provided a pretty detailed update on this last time. Not a lot has changed, but I did want to emphasize a couple of things. So, and I'll share my screen here just so you can see the ODOT website. But so it was Christina just mentioned the House Bill 2017. This idea of work along I-205 to include widening of adding a third lane all kind of came out of the House Bill 2017. And with that came the idea of tolling along I-205. It is still an idea. So, I think it's still open for debate for sure. But ODOT is charged with studying it, and there's quite a bit of work that goes into studying it. So if you follow social media at all, we've kind of shared some of their outreach, and there's an online survey. Some of the responses to that have been pretty negative, as you might imagine, for any ask of additional funding through the public is usually received with mixed feelings. And so, but some of the responses I saw to just the idea of the city posting the survey were fairly negative. And I thought, it's important for us as citizens of Oregon City to recognize that I think our feedback, even if it's negative feedback, or if it's informed feedback based on your thoughts on tolling and maybe how that should happen, are really well suited for the survey itself. And so I just want to make sure folks are paying attention to that. It's there's opportunities for elected officials to have input on this, but it is a pretty high level, and I think I think all the communities around the I-205 project are concerned about tolling. And the couple of things that I've heard from ODOT is, look, we're considering tolling because, one, we need the revenue to build the project. And again, that's debatable. Some folks would feel like, well, why can't they fund it using the funds they have? I think if you look at some of the cost of that project, versus other project needs, the state can pretty easily show there's a lot of unmet need across the state. So this is one of those projects where they think tolling would help raise the revenues needed to build the project. And the other reason is because we've got congestion along I-205. At least we did before COVID. I don't think I've driven I-205 for a while, but you know, congestion at peak hour times pre-COVID has been pretty bad. And so the idea of tolling, or what they're calling congestion pricing, that's another term for it, is a way to manage congestion in a very effective way. And there's lots of national studies that will show that. So, but one of my big concerns is like, why just 205, right? That debate's been going on. Why shouldn't it be more of a regional toll that affects other facilities, not just 205? And then even if they land on just 205, is the corridor long enough to prevent or reduce the amount of traffic that might choose to divert through or around Oregon City? And I think that's where I think input on the survey is important. So yeah, I'll share my screen here real quick and just make sure you know, and make sure those who are maybe watching will know. But I just Googled I-205 tolling project and got to their tolling page. And so this is their tolling page. And is everybody seeing my screen right now? Is that Kim? Can you see it? Okay. So, you know, there's lots of information about it. Latest news. You can sign up to be on to get more emails if you'd like to get more emails through the website. They do have some online open houses. The key piece that I wanted to show you was the online survey in various languages. You know, obviously one of the big things is trying to figure out how to reach those communities that they don't normally hear from on this. So, you know, those with maybe, you know, not that English isn't their first language or even their language at all, they can use other forms to get there. So that online survey, which I'm going to jump into, is pretty extensive. I don't remember. I took this survey about I don't know, early when it was first offered. So I can't even remember how many questions there are, but basically 17 questions, most of which aren't too difficult to get through. Those are all about, you know, who you are as a person, where you live, and you know, who you are. But most of them are pretty straightforward. And I think there's some of these that you can actually include some pretty lengthy responses to if you'd like to. And, you know, there always is a question of how they're going to use it. And I think that's a fair question, because sometimes you do this work and then, you know, they kind of pick and choose how they use it. But I feel like in this case, they're likely to use it. It is part of a larger environmental study that they're working on. So the results from this is I think, going to be scrutinized, and I don't think we have to worry about that. But you know, anything from how you know how, whether you drive 205 to how it would affect you, how well you understand the need, some of their goals, and whether or not you agree with them or not. They're really kind of looking at 5 alternatives. I want to say that number's gotten smaller, but they've continued to list the 5 alternatives. The thing that, again, I struggle with is the length. I think the furthest out they look is I guess it would be south of the 213 interchange would be kind of the first tolling area, and north of Stafford Road interchange. And so to me, that still leaves some diversion opportunities to use the 213 interchange or to use the Stafford Road interchange. And that's why I've personally been asking that they extend that. I haven't gotten a lot of traction with that, but I think, you know, those are the kind of things that I commented on. And so my hope is that if you haven't filled this out, you will. As an advisory committee, I hope you tell your friends and family and neighbors about the tolling study. I think it's our best way as a jurisdiction to be heard. And, you know, not to say that the typical avenues through, you know, the engineering groups or the planning groups or the elected groups, that they won't hear that input from those areas, but I think they put a lot of weight on the community at large. So I think we should be doing all we can to encourage others. And that's what we're trying to do through social media. And so I always struggle with it when people kind of poo-poo the idea of filling out a survey because we're somehow trying to get a specific answer out of that. I don't necessarily believe that, and I don't think that's what's going on here. So other than that, I don't think a lot more to add other than what Dana might want to add.
So where John showed you that link to the survey, right above that is a larger blue box that's actually the open house button. And so I'd probably recommend, if you're not familiar with it, that you go through that open house first before you do the survey. That helps you understand kind of the steps that ODOT's gone through and the decisions or the recommendations they're making. And it gives that technical information. It shows those 5 alternatives in a mapped version, so you can see what those look like.
I clicked on that, Dana, just before the meeting, and it kind of went into, it took a while to do anything, so I wasn't sure exactly what was in that button.
It takes a little while. It comes up and it says setting up easels, printing name tags, and it takes a little while. And then it walks you through the 8 stations like you were at an in-person open house. Some recorded videos and those kind of things. So it's very informative if you're looking to understand what the steps they've gone through and the decisions or recommendations they're making.
So that's all I had for I-205 on the I-205 toll project.
And their presentation that was originally scheduled for August 5th was rescheduled for tomorrow night. Is that right, John? Tomorrow night?
Oh, that's a good reminder. Yes, Dana, that's right. So tomorrow night there will be in front of the City Commission, and I think it's going to be a very high level overview, but hopefully better than what I just gave you. So tomorrow night's City Commission agenda.
I don't know if there's an answer to this question I have, but I'm curious whether with I-5 Rose Corridor controversy going on there in Portland, if they decide not to proceed with that, would that money potentially go to 205 project? Or is that, I don't know how that money would be divvied out if I-5 did not proceed.
Yeah, I think that they're still talking about that. I think there's a lot of politics involved in that. I think it's a good argument to be made, though, that if we're not ready to move forward with the project on the I-5 corridor, then why wouldn't you utilize that money for the I-205 project?
The legislature would have to approve that change because they specifically identified a certain dollar amount for that project. But as John mentioned, there's discussions ongoing about that.
Thank you.
Very good. Henry, are we moving on?
Well, it sounds like it. I was not quite sure how much more report there might be.
Sure.
I'm thinking that the slurry seal project should be over.
It is, and that is my next 2 items, one of which is the slurry seal project. So Jason Thornburg, our transportation manager, pulled together some information for me to relate to you folks tonight. So for the 2020 slurry seal contract, Oregon City Public Works performed the crack sealing prior to the slurry seal contractor coming to town. That encompassed 11.75 lane miles. We used approximately 16,290 pounds of crack seal material. 117 gallons of DTAC. And if you don't know what DTAC is, let me know, I'll let you know. For Oregon City operations, full-time employees, that's 421 man hours. We have not included the seasonal employees as of yet. We recently hired a new asset manager, a young man named Eric Hopwood, who's doing some great work for us. And he hasn't been able, he just hasn't had time yet to incorporate the seasonal employee time to that. With COVID, as you might imagine, like with all projects, we were delayed many weeks in getting out to do the crack sealing, tree trimming, and asphalt repairs prior to the slurry seal contractor coming to town. But if my next statement sounds like I'm boosting up our transportation division, it's because I am. So let's be clear on that. Jason and his crew did an outstanding job in a very limited amount of time to get seasonals on, to perform the crack sealing, asphalt repairs, tree trimming prior to the slurry seal contractor coming to town. We stayed on schedule with the slurry seal contractor, and Jason and his folks did an outstanding job. There were also 3 parking lots that we had slurry sealed for the Parks Department. The VFW Hall, Park Place Park parking lot, and High Rocks parking lot. And internally, we performed asphalt repairs on the following streets prior to the slurry seal contractor: Hunter Avenue, Hiram Avenue, Wake Robin Circle, Barclay Hills Drive, Highland Drive, Woodlawn Avenue, the parking lot at VFW Hall, and the High Rocks parking lot. Total 107,424, to be exact, square yards of slurry seal was put down and inspected. In addition to the slurry seal and crack sealing projects that happened this year, our staff did some pretty major asphalt repairs on 14th Street from Main to Washington, on Center Street, 2nd to 4th, 7th and Molalla, kind of right there on the curve next to the auto parts store, and I think that's Dutch Brothers there. And then several repairs at Washington at the roundabout. And again, I might be biased because Jason and his crew are my folks, but if you guys can, if you haven't already, please take opportunity to drive those roads, especially where they did the asphalt repairs, 14th, Center Street, 7th and Molalla, Washington at the roundabout. Our operations crew is getting really good at doing these dig out repairs and overlays. And I've driven them all. They drive really good. So kudos to Jason and his transportation division. So again, that's sort of some of the statistics that Jason provided to me to relay to you folks. Are there any questions about the crack sealing, slurry sealing, or asphalt repairs we've done this year?
I should just like to say I've used the 7th and Molalla one about 3 times a week, and every time I go across it, I'm just amazed at the improvements you've made. I do have a question that I know you can't answer right now, but I'm just a curiosity thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is if the block of Madison between 4th and 5th is ever going to be scheduled for reconstruction. The last time I looked at it, it was put in like 1972, and I'm starting to think that the asphalt probably used up its lifetime a time or two. But as I said, I'm not expecting an answer tonight. Just don't worry about it.
No problem, Henry. I'm just making a note so I can follow up with you. Did you construct that back when you were an engineer here?
Hey, in 1972, I was with ODOT
gotcha.
in the Dalles.
Very good. Henry, I made a note of that. I'm not sure. I'll have to look that up for you, sir.
I know it was 72 because I got curious and looked when I was working for the city.
Regarding the Washington Street roundabout, is that By the cove, is that what you're referring to?
No, that would be, that roundabout, Ray, is the Main Street extension.
Okay.
Roundabout. Excuse me, swallowed wrong. The Washington Street one is off, I think it's Prairie Schooner Way at the end of Washington Street before it connects, gosh, is that Springwater? So it would be on the sort of northeast of town. That would take you right on, if you go right underneath the 213 overpass.
Oh, I know what you're talking about now.
That
Yeah.
roundabout right there.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Tell Jason and his crew, great job.
I will. I appreciate that. And again, you know, I kind of say it tongue in cheek how much I compliment that crew. But, you know, for those of you that don't know, you know, I'm a paving guy. You know, most of my career has been doing asphalt work. And I've seen some great improvements with the quality and production with our transportation division. And Jason and his crew take it very seriously. And in fact, in regards to the crack sealing, we have a new employee on the transportation division, and he was tasked with crack sealing. He had never done it before, but Jason and Wes Wilson, our lead worker, trained him up. They gave him some seasonals. They gave him a list of roads. And this young man actually went to the point of, if he did 50 bricks of crack seal today, they're going to get 55 tomorrow and 60 the next day. And I'll be damned if he didn't do it. So we've got some really motivated individuals in that division. They're just doing outstanding work. So again, thank you very much for the kind comments for our transportation division. And if there's no other questions, the last thing I have, and it may seem a little far-fetched, but it is transportation related, because the kiosk that is now at the Oregon City Elevator, which is the only vertical street in the United States, which is part of our transportation system, DOCA, the Downtown Oregon City Association, received a grant. I think this is going back 2 or 3 years ago. They commissioned an artist to construct this kiosk. The artist did so. Some work needed to be done to finish the kiosk. And just recently, the kiosk was moved, again, by my transportation division, down to the elevator. DOCA has hired an independent contractor to finish it. So I think if you walk down there tonight or tomorrow, you'll notice the countertop is not on, and it's not totally buttoned up yet. They should have that done by the end of the week. So this is a pretty neat milestone for DOCA. The kiosk has been a heck of a project. Personally, I think it's really cool looking. It's very Art Deco. It sort of matches the feel and look of the elevator. It fits in there nicely. And I think that, as it turns out, one of the biggest benefits of the kiosk right now is, due to COVID, we made the decision with DOCA many months ago to not have an operator in the cab, to have that operator sit outside the elevator behind a couple tables to take their pedestrian counts, perform disinfecting duties. So now with the kiosk there, they can have a nicer place to sit, frankly, behind a couple of plastic tables, still be able to perform those counting duties and their disinfecting processes. And the kiosk will be loaded with, on one side, with some historic, as I understand it from DOCA, some historic pictures, maybe some, replica artifacts. And on the other side of the kiosk would be literature, pamphlets, brochures, things like that. So DOCA is going to take a larger part in not just having a cab operator count people and say hi and give a dog treat out once in a while, but they're actually going to be able to communicate a little more and a little more effectively with our customers that use that elevator in giving brochures, giving information on all the great things in Oregon City, downtown and above the elevator. So again, this kiosk has been a long time coming. There were some issues with it. Those are being vetted out. I think the final product is going to be very aesthetically pleasing and very usable for DOCA, and it should last a very long time. So as I mentioned, I encourage you folks to drive the roads transportation paved. I also encourage you to get down to the elevator and say hi to the operator and check out that kiosk. And again, it should be completed. Last I heard, again, this week, could be next week, but once it's done with the countertop and all the fit and finish, I think it's going to look dynamite.
Yeah, I visited last weekend when I did a bike ride to the elevator, and it looked good then.
Good.
Some people sitting behind the counter.
Great. Thank you, Ray. Folks, that's all I've got for the Public Works report.
Thank you, sir.
You betcha.
What's our next thing? Are we getting close to the end?
That's the end, Henry.
Oh, well, any questions? I have a suggestion that I had, but I want to see if anybody else on the committee has anything to say yet. Okay. I had the occasion to drive around and look at what was on the street. Clackamas County's traffic safety van. It's all decorated with all sorts of vinyl wrap about traffic safety messages, and was wondering if the city could invest in some sort of, traffic safety stickers for their vehicles along the lines of saying, for the lack of anything better, traffic safety starts with you, and because you're driving all the way around place, so maybe people can kind of get a suggestion from looking at the stickers.
That's very interesting. I must admit, Henry, I have not seen that Clackamas County van. I'll have to look it up. I think my short answer is certainly. We've got some big rolling stock here around town that has lots of square footage to put, some different messages, and especially safety related messages on that. And yeah, I'd be more than happy to look into that, Henry.
Well, that's the van that we got a presentation on the county program about a year ago. And zero defects or zero accidents.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I seem to recall that now. Yeah.
I don't recommend contact Rob Sadowski at the county. He's the one who manages that program.
Okay.
Division 0 program is what he manages.
Very good. I believe I know him, Ray. Thank you.
Henry, I would say that I have been thinking, Oregon Impact does a pretty good job of producing literature, signs, stickers, all those kinds of things. So we've seen some of those. We distributed them at the National Night Out. So you've worked that a couple times. You're familiar with that. So we've had those kind of stickers. I don't know if you remember, a few years back we did some stickers for garbage cans that we had out as well for different drive safe campaigns.
They're still around.
I still see them from time to time. I have a couple of things that just came in the mail as examples, and it's got, I get different things from them from time to time, and we have some budget we could probably pursue some of these kinds of things. But here's one that I really thought was pretty cool, and I don't know, I gotta look to see if I can see myself in the picture to see if this shows up, but
yeah, it's
probably
fine.
backwards. But Oregonian crossing, every intersection is a crosswalk. That was one that I kind of thought was cool. And let's see, this guy's a Bigfoot. Yeah, Bigfoot. There's someone in a stroller. I don't know what the guy eating a donut is all about, but anyway, just kind of different stuff. This other one, I just got that. This is another one that's
there we go.
Share the road, and it's got a motorcycle and a car in it. Didn't have a bicycle in it, but anyway, we have some latitude to do that. If you'd like to know a little bit more about what those options are, I think we could probably bring that to you, because I think there's just more and more demand for those kinds of things. I don't know that they're always effective, but we continue to get this concern about intersection safety at signalized intersections even, so the message about pedestrians being having a role in their safety I think people forget that just because you're at a controlled intersection that you can count on people actually, paying attention to you. That's something that I think we just need to kind of keep getting the message out on that. That's a big one because, we've got signalized intersections and concerns from the neighborhood about those signalized intersections not being safe to cross. So those kind of safety messages, whether they're from the county or from a group like Oregon Impact, they're out there, and we could probably just pick a couple of them and make them our new kind of campaign. That's kind of what TAC is charged with, I think, more than anything, is trying to get the word out to folks that, pedestrian, bicycling, driving safety is important. And
nice thing about using the PW trucks is they're everywhere.
True.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
So Henry, if I had some made up, can I do a test fit on that little maroon Miata on 5th Street that I see?
Well, that's got a little one. How about the Baja? It's parked right in front of it.
Oh, better yet.
I had a question. What's the status of the movement to the new facility for Public Works?
You want to give an update, Vance, or you want me to?
I will start, John. Please feel free to chime in. So, good question, actually. So later this month, first part of September, our contractor, Emmerich Construction, the first thing you're going to see, they're going to set up their construction fence around the perimeter of the property. So construction, actually first demolition, then construction, is set to occur first part of September. And right now, the word we're getting from our contractor is roughly a year worth of construction and site work. Certainly there are there's a ton of variables in that, but potentially we could be looking at moving into that facility in, September-ish of next year. Could be a little earlier, could be a little later. Again, many variables in a project this large, but things have been moving along very well with the operations complex. We've been through land use. We got some very good aggressive numbers to the contractor for all their subcontractors. Companies are hungry out there, and that really has helped us out. Just being on track with our finances in that regard. So we're very excited. Things are going to be happening very soon at the operations complex.
Thank you.
I guess all that I do agree. That's a good question, John. All that is contingent on tomorrow night's commission meeting and the commission approving the contract with Emmerich to do all that work that Vance was talking about. So we hope we've got strong support there, and I think we do. What we've heard is get it done. Let's get it done soon. So I'm expecting a favorable decision on the contract, and then that'll really put us on the road to finishing that site.
Anything else? Anybody else? Well, then all I got left to say is we're adjourned.
Thank you,
everybody.
Everybody have a good evening.